So we're going to talk about traction today. And traction is essentially how do you build your customer base and how do you retain your customer base through different marketing strategies. What's cool about this is that the model goes in tandem with the product team. So the way that we should be looking at analog and our work, the way that we work moving forward is it's 50 product, 50 marketing. And we're always in sync with each other. Everything that product builds is directly correlated to the messaging that marketing is pushing out or a well-defined feature that we've identified together that we need. So some basic things to know before we go into the different channels is I guess the framework. I'm going to run through the framework with you. So there's some lingo to learn. In order to move the needle, with traction, moving the needle, we are going to go through different phases. So we're going to start by identifying our outer ring, and that's going through every single one of these 19 traction channels that I'm going to identify. We're going to brainstorm one, each of us independently will go off and brainstorm one way that we could employ this channel for our uses, what that would look like. Now, a lot of these channels may seem irrelevant for us, and that's the secret, because the obvious ones are obvious for a reason, and that's where most people in our field are going to be going. So if we can really think outside the box and do something really original, we stand a chance to enter a much less saturated market. We can retain customers at a much lower cost and gain publicity, things like that. However, given our limited means, I do think some of the more obvious channels, there's benefits to that as well, at least in this early phase. But we should keep all of those in mind because it's going to be a constant journey of exhausting one channel, letting that run its own course and continue, let's say a blog, and then keeping that running while we pivot our attention to a different channel. Or we might decide that we fully exhausted that channel, we want to close it down and move on to another, but it's going to be a constant cycle. There's also targets that we should identify for how much traction is enough for investors. That's another conversation. And then from this outer ring of brainstorming, we're going to then build our middle ring. And the middle ring is when we're going to choose 3 to 5 traction channels to focus on. And then we're going to micro test those, try little things. We've already pretty much been doing that with our social media. We have some data from social media. We kind of know what's effective from our onboard studies. We have some data as far as what our ideal user type might look like. So what I'd really like to get out of this conversation is laying out those channels, identifying who we want to target to reach our goal of 100 weekly active users. I think it's going to be really important to hone in on a niche. It's not our only ideal user, but we should pick one ideal user and find out where they are. And that's going to be our bullseye. Once we hone in on who our ideal user is and where they are and how to reach them, that's our bullseye, and we're going to just go all in into the bullseye. Some things to keep in mind while we're identifying our bullseye is how much is it going to cost to acquire customers through this channel. Now, cost is not just monetarily, but bandwidth. Like, is this a realistic avenue to take? How many customers are available through this channel? I don't know if that's as relevant for us because the numbers that we're looking at are not in the tens of thousands or the millions right now. And are these customers the kind of customers that we want? And then there's great models for how to run these experiments that I also won't go into now, but all this framework is here, and it's going to be like a really great guide to go back to. So that's essentially, that's the basic framework. So the channels, this is the fun part. first channel is targeting blogs. So targeting blogs is a very specific type of publicity and outreach, as distinguishable from traditional PR, which we're going to get into. And then a really interesting case study. I think the best way to lay these out for you is through the case studies, because they're really cool, but also will help us get our wheels turning, I think. So with targeting blogs, the goal with this channel is to reach prospective customers through getting bloggers to write about you. So that's the key thing. It's other people are writing about you. It's not you writing a blog and then pushing it out, but the reverse. So Mint did this, and they had 20,000 people sign up for the product before it even launched by identifying key bloggers in the financial world, giving them early access to the product, and then asking them to write about it, essentially. We start this by creating a long list of blogs to target, and then the most effective, so the downside of this is that it's a lot of manual labor. It's like every single outreach has to be curated for that blogger. Why? You have to ask yourself every time, why would they be interested in writing about us? Because it's a lot of work for them to write. Now, if you have a little money, you can pay them to write. So it's not an ad, but you're hiring, a writer, and you're paying them a few $100. So that's also something to think about maybe down the line. I'm just throwing my ideas out there, but I want to know your ideas as well. So it might be better to save all of that manpower until we have like a little money to pay bloggers. But there might be a few bloggers that we can micro test this channel essentially, and see what we can get for free. The next channel is publicity. This is traditional publicity. Think, as opposed to your blogs, this is your Financial Times, your New York Times. It's publicity through the traditional journalists, outreach to them. This is where you usually hire a PR firm, but it's funny because in this book, a lot of the people that they interviewed said that they were usually unhappy with PR firms when they hired them. And that's always been my experience working with PR firms. That's why so many companies, as soon as they have the means to do it, they build their own in-house PR team, because it's just, for many reasons, it's usually not, it's a very impersonal thing. And I've had a lot of trouble with PR firms myself. So I totally relate to that. So we can do our own publicity and find ways to target formal publications. That's another avenue. Let's see, Ryan Holiday, the director of marketing at American Apparel, he basically said that think of the New York Times. I'm just going to quote him because it's interesting. When they decide to publish an article about you, they're doing you a huge favor. After all, there's so many other people they could write about. However, when you go to a really specific niche, then in this case he wrote Business Insider, which is still a big publication, but it's a much more targeted publication. A lot of what they do is syndication. Syndication means you're essentially like repurposing content. So the New York Times publishes something and it's syndicated across a variety of different channels. So these smaller publications are always looking for content. So in this case, if it's Business Insider, when they write about you, you're doing them a favor because you're giving them content. But that content needs to have a story attached to. And this is where publicity is different to blogging. There needs to be a draw. Think of traditional media, like why are they writing about you? What's the story? It can be tied into a current event that's happening. It can be, maybe we have a collection that is really, really specific to a certain story that they can link to and use as a resource. There's many ways that we that we could utilize this, but that's a key thing to think about is what is in it for them, and like why, how can we help these publications? And there are some good hacks in here that we can also go into more in detail, but like, you know, find the blogs that TechCrunch reads and get story ideas from them, you know, things like that. I don't want to get too deep into this for time. And then there's also unconventional PR, which are PR stunts that can work really, really effectively. I don't know if it's really our vibe, but there's like lots of stories. There's this one, let's see, there's lots of funny stories of unconventional PR that ended up, you know, working out. Like this one startup at South by Southwest, I can't find where it is here, but at South by Southwest, they, instead of buying a stand, whatever you call it, a booth, thank you. Instead of buying a booth, they sent like a mascot for their company in, and he just like threw around flyers and like caused mayhem, and they ended up having to kick him out because he didn't have a ticket. It was like a whole scandal, but they got like 10,000 signups from it, even though the guy got kicked out and they broke the rules. So, but so there are ways. Oh, that was a third channel, unconventional PR. That was a separate channel to publicity. So yeah, there are ways to do that might not be so gimmicky like a mascot, but maybe we can come up with some unconventional tactics, and that could be useful, seeing as they could be free.
The balloons, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Something that's in the analog spirit, right? There was another one with half.com. I'm going to tell you this one because the outcome is interesting. But half.com's PR stunt, what they did was they made a video, and it was to Empire State of Mind, that song, but they called it The New Dork, and it included all of these like tech companies and tech people and whatever, and they like featured them in this parody video that went viral. It went viral because all of these top tech people were featured in the video. So like Ashton Kutcher shared it. So Ashton Kutcher is a celebrity. He's also a tech investor. It was a very strategic decision to put him in that video, and that like, you know, went completely viral. And I don't know what the numbers are. It doesn't really matter, but it did really well for half.com. So that's something else to think about. You can do something big, cheap, fun, and original. Be awesome to your customers and good things. Follow and prepare for failure. A lot of times this isn't going to work. Search engine marketing is, I'm just gonna give the definition here because I don't want to get too deep into all of these. But search engine marketing as opposed SEM as opposed to SEO. So it allows companies to advertise to consumers searching on Google and other search engines. So that's one track that we can take. And then there's all of these ways to optimize your content for that. And then all the different SEM strategies, which we don't need to go into. And then social and display ads. So the difference between the search engine marketing, that's specifically Google display ads. So then the difference with social and SEM is Google ads, and then social and display ads would be ads on popular sites like Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and hundreds of other niche sites, which can be a powerful and scalable way to reach new customers. We should, regardless of whether we choose this channel or not, I think it's really, really important to make a list of, in addition to like those blogger sites, the bloggers, also the Reddit channels and other niche sites like hacker, whatever, like any of those niche sites that will have a really targeted audience once we identify who our audience is. Social and display ads, I'm just going through my highlights. Something to keep in mind is that the goal of social ads is often awareness oriented, not conversion oriented. So we're just building awareness, getting people familiar. They keep seeing us pop up time and time again, and then eventually it will lead down the funnel to a conversion, but that's not the immediate goal, and it's really important to keep that in mind when you're identifying your, what is success. Also, if you're investing time and energy creating a great piece of content, it makes sense to spend a little bit of money to ensure that the content gets wide distribution. Given our really low budget right now, I think something that we should always keep in mind when we're creating content is content that's evergreen. We shouldn't try to be too timely because we're investing a lot of our resources in creating this content and we want it to last. And then when we do have some money to put behind it, you know, we can, and it's still relevant. So that's something I'm always gonna try to be keeping in mind. Some other interesting sites to think about are Foursquare for location, targeted location tagging, Reddit, Pinterest, Scribd is on here, BuzzFeed. Those are some that we can start looking into, Rosie. Mm-hmm. Then there's offline ads, you know, billboards, which honestly, an analog billboard would be so sick. And the Super Bowl commercial, all that, print and magazines. One thing that I thought was really interesting was this one founder was saying that he was looking at all of the really big, you know, the Vogue magazines and the New York Times, the New Yorker magazines. Those are really expensive to buy ads, and it has this kind of it's not an ego thing, but it's a legitimacy thing, and it's like you want to be in those publications. But he saw so much more customer engagement and signups through these really targeted niche publications. So just like niche blogs, like maybe the New York Times isn't where you really want to be putting your focus in now. In this moment, maybe you do want to focus on the niche print and blog sites. And then there's search engine optimization, which is, I think, key regardless of what. I think we should be focusing on this in all stages and regardless of which channel we choose to hone in on. But search engine optimization, I'm sure you guys all know, it's like making sure that your website shows up on Google search mostly. Google search takes up 90% of the search engine, so we'd be optimizing for Google, not like Yahoo or Bing. And what's great about analog is that Joel has already built that feature in. We show up in Google results a lot, so the content team are something that I'm always going to be keeping in mind is how can we group content together? How can we promote a piece of content that is going to do well on search? So what are the keywords people are searching on, searching with, you know, taking a look at Google Trends, all of those. If we really wanted to hone in on that strategy, that could be like a full-time focus. Or we can keep piggybacking off the SEO results that we're already getting. But I think it's really important to keep in mind when we're writing a blog or when we're doing outreach, creating new pages, asking bloggers to write about us, how they can, you know, link to a page that's going to further accelerate our SEO, our search results, because links are everything, and we want to be linked in as much as possible. And then there's different strategies for that. Content marketing. So content marketing, the definition here is many startups have blogs. However, most don't use their blogs to get traction. We talked with Unbounce founder Rick and OkCupid founder to learn how their blogs transform their business. So as opposed to targeting blogs, the content marketing is going to be our own in-house blog, and how do we get traction through that? For Moz, Unbounce, and OkCupid, their blog was at one time its largest source of customer acquisition. They started blogging a year before they even had a product, and that's what this whole book is about too. It doesn't matter so much whether your product is ready, whether you even have one, whether you have all the features that you want. It's about telling your story and providing people with useful content. So when they search, this also ties into SEO. You'll see that a lot of these channels, even if we just focus on one, there'll be a lot of secondary channels that are going to be feeding into that bullseye. So one thing that was really in, oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. But Oh yeah, so that content book was about creating content even before you have a product. And also the way that it ties into SEO is answering questions that your customers are asking. So whether that's questions that we're getting from our onboards, or whether that's going into like search result, like Google search, and using keywords and whatever, when they type in that search, you have an answer for that. And so this is, these are really good strategies to use when we're thinking about what we want to blog about. And we should have a list of like 50 blog topics and just like start churning out blogs, whether it's once a week, once a month, like we'll see what's manageable, but this could be a really, really effective strategy that we don't need. If we're smart about what we write about, how we get it out there, we don't need ads to push it out, because if it answers a question that's not self-promotional, so it's not about analog, but rather about this product feature, or it's about this universal personal question that people really want to understand the meaning behind analog, these more subtle things that link to the product but not directly, then people are going to want to share that because it's good content and it solves a problem. So we have to always be thinking about the user and like, why would they want to share this? And then that's how we'll get free traction. So I think making a list of those questions is really going to be key. And then engaging with users on sites like Quora and Reddit, Slack channels. You found 2 great onboards yesterday through Slack. And then if we have a blog, you link to that piece of content. So it's like, oh, I actually have an answer for you. Check this out. Or and we have this amazing opportunity because analog itself is content. So we can be linking to collections, to answer questions in different blogs or different forums. Yeah, it says here, write about the problems facing your target customers. Infographics are often shared. Videos are really shareable. Think of things that people are going to want to share. Engage. What can I skip through here? This is a strategy that I use a lot with the other sites that I manage, but reaching out to influential people on Twitter and asking them to share. So whether we ask them to write a blog or whether we just ask them to share our blog, I mean, even if our first approach is just asking them to share, that can be incredibly effective. And it's that approach would take creating Twitter lists and having like people in different categories that we're just like ready to push content out to every single time we have something, and just like do individual outreach that way. It says here, do things that don't scale early on. And I really related to that because everything that I've done has been very, very hands-on, but it's so effective. And something to also keep in mind is that I was telling Spencer this earlier, a blog might not get any traction until like 6 months later, and all of a sudden someone shared it and it just went crazy. You could write 100 blogs before that one does. So this is an incredibly powerful channel, but it's also a very long, you have to have the long game in mind and be patient with it. Next one, email marketing. Email marketing can be used for all stages. So this is something that we have been really seriously considering as well. And so I just wanted to throw some ideas out there as we continue to brainstorm the email functionalities that we're gonna build. So many companies require an email address for people to access premium content like videos or white papers. Email marketing is a great way to improve your customer activation rates. A popular approach is to create a sequence of emails that slowly exposes your new customers to the key features in your product. Email them 5 days after they've signed up and say, hey, did you know that we have this feature? Dropbox did this. If you create an account but you never upload a file, you're not active. Maybe you signed up for the site and you got busy. When this happens, Dropbox automatically emails you reminding you to upload a file or to log a book. With these targeted emails, Dropbox has increased the chance that you will return to the product and become an active user. For these emails, you need to determine the steps which are absolutely necessary to get value from your product. Then you create targeted emails to make sure people complete those steps. For those who fail to complete step 1, create a message, blah, 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 and keep going. There are tools that you can use to automate these messages. I don't know if that's something that we want to build in-house or outsource. I don't know how that works, but there are tools here that we can look into. And then also just personal outreach, like those emails that we send to after every onboard, 24 hours later, we send an email, hey, it was so great to meet you. If you need it, can't wait to see what you log, like here's whatever. Case studies show that that's incredibly effective. Any sort of communication telling your customers how well they're doing is really likely to go over well. And then also there's still automated emails that serve that same function, which are to retain customers and keep active customers engaged. So you can send emails that showcase your previous engagement with the product. For example, photo sites will send you pictures you took a year ago. At the end of the day, the goal with any of these emails is to make the customer feel good. Like, you're on a great streak. What a cool thing you logged. Look who else logged this. Our newsletter is like, we featured, these top curators, whatever it is. Find ways to make them engaged, excited, and feel special. For feature-based freemium products, emails that explain a premium feature a customer is missing out on can have high conversion rates. So you can ask them to subscribe. You can also do annual billing. There's all of these tips. That's once we monetize. And then there's email marketing for referrals, giving people an incentive to tell their friends. So I think I read this one to you guys already, but in order to get more free space, users send referral emails asking their friends to check out Dropbox. There's other apps like Asana. They'll ask their customers to import their address books to share the site with their friends. And those are probably some of the most interesting. So we've already done the Twitter integration. Address book is something else to think about. I'm just throwing all the ideas out there. And then that's email. Viral marketing is any time a friend's Pinterest post appeared in your Facebook feed, or when you received an automated email from a friend telling you about a product. That's viral marketing.
Sorry, did we already talk about engineering as marketing?
No, we haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, we're on 15 now. There's 4 more.
Marketing.
So viral marketing, the difference between viral marketing and a lot, as you see, a lot of these connect, right? So a blog can lead to viral marketing, but viral marketing in of itself is its own channel. So this is integrating as many features as you can within the product so that it's automatically pushed out on other platforms, like a Pinterest. Like when you pin something on Pinterest, it shows up in your Facebook feed. Dropbox, Instagram, Snapchat, and Pinterest all leveraged virality through these super platforms to acquire tens of millions of users in just a few years. And you create a viral loop, and there's a whole, like, you read a whole book about how to create viral loops. There's a whole formula for it. Then there's a few ways to think of virality. So there's like the traditional word of mouth. Then inherent virality occurs when you get value from a product only by inviting other customers. So it's like, if you have WhatsApp, it's worthless if your friends aren't on WhatsApp. So you have an incentive already built into the product to share it. But then there's other products that grow by encouraging collaboration. So it's good to use analog on your own, but it's even better if you're using it with your friends. How do we tap into that? So that's like Google Docs. So we can use Google Docs as a good case study for our product. And that's once people are aware of the added value in having your friends on the platform, then this network effect will start to kick in, and more people will be adding. will be added. So if we really want to push this, then we can set up an entire, automated email funnel, blog explainers, and push that in our social media messaging. Like everything can be funneling into this main channel, which is like educate the user on the advantage of using this with your friends, and then the end goal of that will be to go viral, like to get into this viral loop. There's a lot of ways. There's products. This also feeds into engineering, but we can embed buttons and widgets so that it's really easy for people to share, and even just like those really easy social sharing features, and immediately tweet, automatically updates to Facebook, Reddit. We should identify which are the ones that we really want to focus on, because we're not going to ask you guys to go build all of them. So like it would be important to have like the whole line in mind. So it's like, are we really going to be focusing on Reddit? Okay, perfect. Then let's build a Reddit, automatic button. And then like, how do we best embed in Reddit? And like answer all of those questions and like focus on one, rather than just saying, oh, we should add social buttons. Like, let's make every decision really, really deliberate. Then there's also like account credits and bonuses if you invite your friends, like perks that you can get. That's probably mostly going to happen once we start charging, but also something to keep in mind. And these are all different ideas. We don't need to go too in detail. Engineering is marketing. Next channel. So in this case study is HubSpot. So HubSpot built a free marketing review tool called the Marketing Grader, and so that's available to everyone. And it like using that type of like that free Chrome extension. I think it was a Chrome extension. I don't know. Using that free tool essentially got millions and millions of people. And the way that they came up with the idea. Sorry.
I was saying Midas.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking at them. The way that they came up with this idea is kind of also an interesting mindset to think about. But he says, my co-founder would constantly send me websites he wanted me to take a look at so we could determine if they were a good fit. So I built an application to automate that process for me. And eventually I realized that a lot of other people would want this. And so I just made it available for free. And like, that's just how that evolved. And these are, I'm just skipping through here. There's like so much information on this, but I think with this traction, our Chrome Midas is going to be like, it's such an asset. And even after reading this book, seeing how much companies have invested in building something like that, or how many companies just don't have the in-house engineering team or the talent to be able to do that. This is a huge advantage that we have as an entry startup, and I think promoting that, could be huge because it sets us apart. And so how can we educate and push that out through our marketing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to that,
Yeah, please do.
my understanding of this is also that, like, I think with Midas, it's great, but it's still part of the product. Whereas, like, my understanding from this, from when I first read it, is that it's tools that are almost like not your product, but that are related to your product,
Yeah.
that feed your product, right? So another example is Buffer, which is like a social media tool that lets you post for later, right? Like you post your stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the tools they offer for free is this like social media picture card creator. So
Yeah.
you can like type quotes and it creates like a cool background and a quote, and then anyone can use that, and you download the image
Yeah.
and then you share it on your Twitter. But it's like, hey, you're interested, you like this, like try Buffer.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I'm thinking about that, I think about less in Midas, because Midas is the product, versus like something like, hey, like here's a little cool tool to share like some content that you posted, or I don't know what the
Yeah.
answer is, but those are what I'm thinking about in terms of engineering as marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal, right?
Yeah,
and that's
for
brilliant.
sure.
I didn't want to push, you know, like build a new thing just for marketing kind of
Sure.
thing. Like maybe let's work with what we already have.
No, totally.
But that's exactly the way that
Yeah.
we should be thinking with that.
Exactly.
I think Buffer is an amazing example, and later it's a similar company. They have these really great social media features, and
Yeah.
you can create content for free, and it's watermarked.
Exactly.
And then you can pay to remove the watermark. So eventually, if it's popular, it's not only driving people to your page, but you can monetize off of it. So I think that's
Totally.
definitely something that we think about at some point.
Totally agree.
Okay, then 17 is business development. This is standard partnerships. Think Apple and Nike with the Nike shoe, the whatever, the Nike Plus shoe. Joint ventures. So this is the Starbucks Double Shot Espresso was a joint venture between Starbucks and Pepsi. There's licensing. This is Spotify and Groove Shark. Licensing is something that might be really key for us down the line. And distribution deals. So Groupon's core model is distribution deals. And then supply partnerships, but that's more for actual product. But eventually, I mean, if we want to do, our like publications and books and stuff, that's something to think about.
It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
School.
Not just time.
Yeah, there's two more, so I'm gonna skip through there's all these details on how to make a deal. And then the last ones honestly are really fast. I just want to tell you what they are, but they're probably not relevant to us, even though this is not the way you're supposed to be thinking about it. But then there's sales. Sales are really when you have a very expensive product that you need to go door to door to sell. So think Salesforce, or even like vacuums, right? I don't know. Like back in the day, right? The guy who sold vacuums, that's sales. And then affiliate programs. This is something really interesting. I don't think we're there yet, but affiliate programs is a way that by creating affiliate links, it's a way that we can make money whenever people buy content off our site. Whenever our site leads them to Amazon or a bookshop or whatever, it's also a way that we can pay our creators. And you can also tie this in with BizDev because you can create like a formal partnership like Zappos did. Zappos is like the king of this, apparently. They've done really well. And there's all these different ways that you can incorporate affiliate programs, but we do need more, what do you call it? More site hits, like more traffic. We need more traffic before that becomes a viable option. And then existing platforms, this is the App Store. There's a whole strategy for how you can get Midas, for example, feature in the App Store and like drive clicks just through that. And Evernote did a brilliant job with this, and it's worth you guys looking deeper into like this chapter if you're interested in what Evernote did. They're a really interesting case study. Trade shows, that is not relevant in the time of COVID, so I'm gonna skip. Offline events, neither relevant, not relevant either. Speaking engagements, Rosie's worst nightmare, but very effective.
She's gonna be doing plenty of those later.
Okay, that's what dinner's for.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
But there's a way that we can think about this speaking engagement channel and make it virtual, because that's kind of where the world is headed anyway. So that's like these videos, but much better done. We can produce really great video content and inspiring content. And then community building, which is the last one and also really key. And this ties into a lot of the other channels as well, but it's like, how do we nurture the community that we already have? And not just keeping them engaged through like the email marketing channel, but actually bonding with them, forming relationships with them, creating a space where then they break off into their own groups, like Facebook groups, and they start to form communities of their own. How do we educate the consumer that this is a place for that? And then how do we create an atmosphere where they really feel that this is where they want to have those conversations? So that's something that we should also always be thinking about through all the conversations we're having around notes and shared collections. Like, how can we really build a community? Because I do think that this is really important to all of us. So there's also lots of details on that, but this is something that we can go into much more deeply in like a book that's specifically on how
I want to call it Get Together.
yeah,
That'd
on
be
how to
fun,
build
yeah.
community. But I think community should be, could be something really important for us. So that's the rundown of the channels.
That's dope.
Yeah?
We never have to read that book now.
Yeah, you never have to read the book, exactly. That's the rundown. Does anyone have any initial comments or questions? Was I not clear?
Question, do you know when that was published?
Yeah, I mean I don't, but it's fairly recently because I worried about that myself.
I'm just wondering if there's any other channels that might be missing that are more recent in the last couple years. Because I think
This is 2015.
2015.
2015 it says here, Carl.
Okay,
So there's
5 years.
so there's definitely new.
You know, so there's no TikTok back then, none of that. Not necessarily.
Yeah, but so
Still part
Snapchat,
of the
so the way that
social.
it's written too, it kind of, it doesn't give you like a play-by-play for Instagram.
Of course.
It gives you a general overview. So Instagram now has Reels, which is TikTok, like there's always new, and it addresses that. There's always new iterations. So how can you create content that's lasting, and then how can you repurpose it for all of these new platforms? And then the biggest thing is, how can you be ahead of the game? How can you see what's coming next? Because those are the, like, Facebook, forget Facebook, right? But it's just, it's not even oversaturated, it's just crap at this point. Instagram, like, you can get a great audience. We have an advantage because we know people with high followings, but it's a very saturated market. How can we be on the edge of like what's next? That's what Evernote did with the App Store. They had a version for the iPad before the iPad came out and before they had ever even seen the iPad. You know, so it's a risk because you could be investing in a platform that might fail, but if it pays off big.
Yeah, you're the first mover. It's like the first TikTokers that become huge because
Totally.
no one's on it.
Totally. So we should, and that's why I wanted to outline all of these and spend some time, everyone, just like thinking about it, because there are really obvious, you know, avenues to take, but I myself want to actually really brainstorm, like, how can we be creative? How can we do something different and maybe not so obvious? And maybe now's not the time to do it. Maybe now we only have the resources to do what we can, and that's okay. But we should be an innovator, and we should be, you know, in these emerging markets, platforms, niches, conversations, all of that.
Yeah, and frankly, I think even TikTok, Reels, like those are still within the vein of, you know, existing platforms, right? So
Yeah.
I think that no matter, I feel like this, to me, like this is like a overall like broad encompassing like summary of the landscape, which is a good starting point. Regardless, I don't think we should always be like thinking creatively, but like having constraints to think creatively within will help propel our creativity.
Agreed.
Great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You obviously can't reach the same viral growth with offline channels, but they're clearly still relevant. And I'm wondering if maybe they have a greater impact on people. Like if you see something in person versus seeing it online, which is so oversaturated.
Yeah.
But how do tech companies that maybe only exist online leverage offline channels?
Yeah, so the biggest thing here, and where this can really, really fail, is to not be targeted. It's to know your audience. And if you have a product that's geared towards someone over 50, even if it's online, it actually makes sense to target them through the mail or to target them in a magazine. You need to ask the publishers for all of their analytics, their demographics. The conversion rates can be really, really high, but where they can really mess up is by not doing that homework first.
Got you.
So
Like,
knowing a user.
yeah. So I'm gonna be standing up. So essentially, I'm giving a presentation.
I'm good.
Just
I'm good.
finished.
Should you guys even be touching me yet?
Oh, that's true.
Well, I got tested like 3 times.
Okay. Well, I mean, I already hugged you. I didn't even think of that.
I'm mad at you then.
Why are you mad at me?
Your response to
Dude,
I
it was
know.
bad.
that.
What's up, boys?
You were sonating?
Dude,
Yeah,
the
yeah. I was
entire-
like, what are you
Maybe I don't
doing?
wanna
You're
touch
so
you.
gross.
No, I'm hella gross. Don't touch me.
What's up?
What's up?
He's real. He's just.
Should we eat these things? It's just like snacks I had in the car.
Sure, we can throw them over there. We have
Alright.
other snacks.
Tom's home.
He's
back.
back.
Tom's
Welcome
home from college.
And we just finished work, so that was awesome. Thank you guys for listening. Thank
you for
you
doing the
for
research.
letting me. It was really helpful for me to just get it out as well. I
That was
think
really good, by the way.
was it?
Yeah, the fact that you could bust that
Alright,
out
I'm gonna turn it off.
with, yeah, go ahead.